Hey guys, it's Kira and welcome to another vlog. I hope you are having an absolutely wonderful day, whatever day it happens to be for you when you're watching this. For me, it is Friday morning and I'm feeling just so happy today, which is obviously a wonderful thing. And I'm really attributing that happiness entirely down to the fact that spring has officially started. Today is Friday the 25th of March, so on Monday of this week it was the 21st, which is the official spring equinox. I'm a big lover of equinoxes, first of all because equinox is such a fun word to say, but second of all because I do think the changing of the seasons is such a fun thing to witness, and I definitely feel very lucky to live in a place in the world where we get to appreciate all of the seasons very distinctly. I think spring though happens to be one that just brings the most excitement with it, because winter always feels so long, but spring just feels so welcome when it arrives every single time. You never feel like spring's come too soon. I think sometimes you can feel as though autumn has come too early, or rather winter comes too early when you're in autumn and the cold weather just seems like it's approaching far too fast. But spring on the other hand, I think you are always just so excited for, or at least I am for one, and it has just been so exciting to see that happen this week, both officially, as I said, with the spring equinox and also in the changing of the weather, because this week has been so warm, notably warm enough for me, someone who is always cold, to leave the house without a coat on, which has been wonderful. Also warm enough for Jay's dreams to come true, because he bought himself a kayak on eBay and we were able to go for a gorgeous morning walk where we watched the sunrise coming up, and Jay was paddling along on the river. I was walking alongside the river because I'm not quite brave enough to go anywhere near cold water on account of what I just said about always being cold, but it was beautiful all the same, and we are just making the most of the spring weather, and it feels as though it has just come fully fledged this week into spring, and I feel so joyous about it. So wherever you are in the world, I really hope that some of that spring goodness is coming your way, because it has just made the biggest difference to my week personally, and I'm just so excited for a new season to be here. So cheers to that, and cheers to trying a new flavour of tea. So on account of spring and being so excited about the changing of weather, I have gone for a very botanical flower focused tea brought to us courtesy of Bird and Blend Tea, who are the company that I bought my tea advent calendar from back in December, and along with that tea advent calendar I was sent a sample of this one, which is called Dozy Girl. So this is meant to be a sleepy time tea blend, but the flavours are all very botanical, because we have chamomile, lemon verbena, hibiscus, rose petals and lavender. So I think it'll be quite a cosy, soothing, mellow flower blend, but one of the most exciting things about spring is of course the springing up of flowers, so this flowery tea seemed like the perfect one to try today. So without further ado, let's give it a try. Oh, I really like that. I'm trying to think, so all of those flavours, the two that are coming through the most are lavender, which I think brings almost like a herby warmth to it. It kind of reminds me of rosemary, both in the smell and the flavour, and then the lemon verbena, which adds a definite level of sweetness and just like a delicate tang and zinginess without overpowering the tea. I think chamomile definitely comes through as well, the rose not so much, but even still, the blend of all of those flowery flavours together I don't think is perfumey, which is I think what you maybe would be worried about with so many flowers brought together, and instead is just really warm and comforting, and I really like them actually. I would say this is probably one of my favourite herbal teas that I've tried, because typically I'm not a big fan of herbal teas. I find them disappointing and often underwhelming in terms of how powerful the flavours are, but I think in this one the blend of flavours is just right, where you can taste all the right things but no one flavour is too overpowering, but you're also not searching for a flavour that you can't find. So I think it's really tasty actually, so big fan of this one, would recommend. So I can't wait to dive into that cup of tea along with some breakfast, which I'm just currently in the process of making. We're going to have cinnamon apples with some yogurt and almond butter, because while I'm excited for the start of spring, cinnamon apples that may typically be an autumn flavour for me are just a year-round thing that I always like to have. And alongside all of those things, keeping me company today will be two great books. So let's dive into what I'm going to be reading this weekend. First things first, we have Alias by Margaret Atwood, which is one that I'm reading for the A to Z of Classics read along that I'm hosting with my friend Sarah. I'm already 170 pages through this one, and what I've read so far has been really, really interesting. I do still have over half of the book left to go and about 6 days left to finish those pages in, but on account of finding the first bit of the book so interesting, I don't think that's going to be too much of an issue because I really can't wait to see what happens. This is the book which focuses on a woman called Grace, hence the title Alias Grace, who is living in Canada. She is an Irish immigrant and this is set in the 1800s, and Grace was working as a servant in a household where the house mistress and the master are found murdered, and Grace, along with a gardener who was also working in the house, are accused of these murders, and then she is essentially in prison at the start of this book, and we focus on her as well as a doctor that's taken a particular interest in her story, and basically trying to figure out whether or not she actually did it. So compared to some of Margaret Atwood's other books like Oryx and Crake or The Handmaid's Tale, of course, which are far more dystopian and science fiction-y in their nature, this one definitely feels more mysterious and grounded in reality, but really, really interesting. So super excited to see what goes on in the rest of this book, and I'll definitely be trying to make my way through most of the rest of this book this weekend, as it is the last weekend of March. Then the other book is a highly anticipated new release for me, and that is The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. Lucy Foley is, I would say, probably my favourite mystery writer. She is the writer of The Hunting Party and The Guest List, which are both incredibly gripping murder mysteries that I personally loved. And this one is yet another murder mystery that she has added to her repertoire. And I think the thing that I enjoy most about her murder mysteries is the fact that they are so dynamic and multifaceted. You often have at least 2 timelines and always multiple different perspectives, so you are unfolding this mystery and like what happened as you go, and you don't actually know who the person who has been murdered is. You find that out as the book goes on, so you're like hearing things from all these characters, not knowing if they are the victim or the perpetrator or anything else to do with the novel. And I just think you find out so much information in such a granular way that you are just gripped the entire way through, and that's what I'm hoping for from this one. I have seen mixed reviews, but equally I'm excited to go in with an open mind, and I personally think, given the fact that I love her other books, I will really enjoy this one. So that is my Friday. Who knows what the rest of the weekend will hold, but you will be the first to find out. Well, as predicted, The Paris Apartment is proving to be quite a page turner. So, of course, going in, I knew that it was a murder mystery and I knew that it was set in Paris, but I had no other real information about the book other than those 2 pretty obvious facts. But essentially, this book starts with a prologue where we meet the character who we presume has been murdered. And this is the guy called Ben, who is English, living in a Paris apartment block, and basically it kind of like leads up to him being like whacked over the head, and then it goes into the actual text. And his sister Jess is one of the main characters, and she was travelling from London to Paris to meet him on that day, but she arrives at the apartment to find that he is missing, and then gradually we are meeting all of the other I guess like residents of this apartment block, all of whom have some kind of connection to Ben and don't seem to like him very much, and we're gradually building up this picture of who he is, the mystery of his life, how he was acquainted with all of these different people, and ultimately what happened. So at this point in the book, and I'm gonna guess for quite a lot of the book, pretty much everyone seems like a suspect except for Jess, his sister, who obviously arrived we think after the event had happened, and is therefore kind of, I guess, taking on the detective role as she is trying to figure out what on earth has happened to her brother and why he wasn't there when she arrived. So it's, I guess, a little bit different from some of Lucy Foley's other ones, because these are all people who are quite distinctly like individual, and they have their own storylines and lives, and of course their like shared piece of information is the fact that they all live in this same apartment block, whereas the other mysteries that I've read from Lucy Foley have kind of focused on groups of friends. So there is the hunting party, which is a group of friends who go up to a hunting lodge for a New Year's celebration, and then the guest list, which is all about a wedding. So it's all about people whose lives are already kind of intertwined, whereas this one feels slightly different, and as if each of the characters are a bit more isolated from each other, so there's a bit more mystery sort of building up around how each of their lives may or may not intersect. So really enjoying it. I'm now on page 103, and like I said, such a page turner. I really don't want to put it down, but on account of the fact that it is such a beautiful day, I think I'm going to head out for a little walk just to get some steps in. I try and make sure that on all of my days off work that I get at least 10,000 steps just to keep those activity levels up, and of course also it's just lovely to get outside and get some fresh air. And then when I'm back, I'm sure I'll be having yet another cup of tea and getting on with some more reading. The only danger of Lucy Foley's books, and the fact that they are so gripping and like page turnery, means that it's going to be hard to split my time between this and Alias Grace, and I know I need to prioritise Alias Grace probably a little bit more, but my heart wants to read The Paris Apartment. What a beautiful way to start the day. It is currently Saturday morning, and I am making the most of the gorgeous weather by coming outside, sitting in the garden, drinking a coffee, and of course getting some reading done. I'm genuinely such a distractible person that when I sit inside and I know that I'm connected to Wi-Fi, or that the TV is there, or my laptop is around, I find it really hard to sit down and read a lot in one go, because I just get so easily distracted, and I think it's just a force of habit where you're just constantly reaching for other things. Whereas in the summertime, or rather in the springtime as it is now, when it's nice enough to come outside and read, I just find that I am nowhere near as distractible, and I find it so much easier to just like sit down and focus on a book, which is lovely. So I decided to make the most of that opportunity this morning, and oh my god, it is just so lovely. I really could just stay here all day. I of course started with Alias Grace this morning because priorities, though I really want to read some more of The Paris Apartment, I also definitely need to get this book done and dusted. So I'm now on page 220, so I'm approaching halfway through this book, and it's really interesting. What I will say is that some of the characters are a little bit confusing, particularly the doctor that has taken this interest in Grace and her story, and sometimes you get little bits of like background about him and his life that feel a little bit harder to follow, or maybe like not quite as relevant to the book. But then on the alternative side, we get a lot of information about Grace and her backstory, and in particular the part that I've just read has really focused on her experiences, or her first experience of working in like a rich house in Toronto as a servant, and some of the friends that she made, and kind of like how she settled into that life, and some of the things that happened to her. And those bits so far have been the most interesting parts of the story, because I just find it really intriguing to learn about her experiences, and I definitely think those are the most gripping parts of the book for me. But really, on the whole, definitely enjoying this book. I'm going to be reading some more today. Now it's currently approaching midday. Actually, I've been sat out here for quite a while now. It's 11:30. I have a yoga class that I'm going to very shortly, and then I have no other plans for the day, so I'm definitely going to come back and make some more of the afternoon sun. The only other thing on my agenda today, aside from reading, is the fact that yesterday the second series of Bridgerton was released on Netflix, and I absolutely loved Bridgerton last year, as I think most of us did. It was so addictive, and I didn't watch any yesterday because I ended up being busy, and I definitely want to make a start on that today. I'm going to try not to fall into the hole of binging it, first of all because it's nice to spread it out and have something to look forward to, and second of all because I don't want to spend my entire day inside watching TV. So I'll probably watch an episode of that with lunch when I get back, and then get outside for some more reading. Such a long time since I've had like a weekend day where I've not had a single social engagement, so today feels really long, but in a nice way, because I feel like all I've had to do is just basically what I want to do, and it feels really lovely to have a day that's just like completely free. My yoga class was incredible. There were only 3 people in it. I'm assuming because it is such a sunny, bright and wonderful day. Obviously most people probably don't want to spend it inside at a hot yoga class, and instead want to just make the most of the sunshine outside. And I think probably if I only had a 2-day weekend, I'd probably be in the same boat where you want to make the most of the days you have off. But definitely one of the perks of my 3-day weekend is I feel like I have time to get everything done, and the fact that it was just a 3-person class was wonderful because there was so much space. It was a like dynamic class, so it was quite focused on some more experienced and challenging postures, which I just find so fun to try. And you definitely fall, you definitely end up on your face a couple of times, but those are kind of my favourite classes, because I think those ones where you are pushing yourself beyond your boundaries are the like classes that make you grow and that help you get stronger. So yeah, had a great time at the yoga class, and then came straight back and started on the second season of Bridgerton, which is so fun. I was worried that season 2 maybe wouldn't have quite the same appeal as season 1, but so far, I'm only 1 episode in, but so far it is seeming like it's gonna have the same bingeability appeal as season 1. I just think it's so fun. One of my favourite things about it actually is the fact that it is obviously set with like a Regency era style, but then there are elements of modernity in there, and my favourite way that they do that is through like the string quartet orchestra kind of versions of like popular songs. So last season they had Wildest Dreams by Taylor Swift. They also had like I think Thank You Next by Ariana Grande, and this season I've heard that there is Sign of the Times by Harry Styles in one episode, which I'm very excited for. So loving Bridgerton. but I have made myself stop after episode 1 to do some reading of the Paris apartment, and I'm now 200 pages in exactly because the chapter ended on page 200. I feel like I can't say loads about this book without obviously being spoilery, which I don't want to do, in the sense that it is a thriller and mysteries, and I think the best way to experience these books is by just allowing the mysteries to unfold as you read them without any prior expectations. But what I will say is that one of the things that I simultaneously love and hate about Lucy Foley's books is the gradual revelation of information that you get, which I think is typical for all mysteries, but the way that it happens in Lucy's books is that obviously because we have multiple different perspectives, you get little hints from different characters, and gradually all of these individual jigsaw pieces come together to like create this incredibly dynamic puzzle. And because we're constantly switching between perspectives, you get just this little hint of something, and then you have to wait a few chapters before the information starts to kind of like reveal itself into something that makes sense. And so I love that because it constantly keeps me wanting to keep reading and find out what happens. But from a selfish and extremely nosy person point of view, I hate it while I'm waiting for the information because I just want it all now. But equally, I know that the spreading out and gradual dripping of info is what makes the book so addicting. So I love it, I hate it, but really I love it. So loving that. Don't know if I mentioned this, but I'm loving it. And the bit that I just read was one of the, I guess, like major pieces of information. Of course, all of the different bits that you find out throughout each of the chapters gradually sort of lead you to the conclusion, but there are a few, I guess, like big curtain drop pieces of information where you're like, whoa, didn't see that coming. And we just had one of them at about halfway through the book, and that made me feel chilled to my core. It almost just like allows you to be in the perspective of the main character, who you know is just completely naive to the people that she's surrounded by and is in danger, but you don't know how long it's going to take her to know and if she'll find out before it's too late. So I feel like you just feel chilled when you get those bits of info, and I'm loving it. I really am. So definitely going to be doing some more reading of that, definitely going to be watching another episode of Bridgerton, and of course I will try and get through some more of Alias Grace. But I've just made myself a cup of tea and I'm going to grab a little snack and make a start on episode 2 of Bridgerton, because I, just like with Lucy Foley's book where I need to know what happens next, I feel the same way about Bridgerton, although far less chilled to my core and more just like anticipating all of the fun that is going to come from the season. It's Sunday morning now, and today also happens to be Mother's Day, so I'm just getting ready to go and spend the day with my mum, of course, because what else would I be doing today? It is quite early. It's currently just before 8:30 in the morning. I've been to the gym this morning already, come home, had a shower, gotten ready, and now I'm just about to head out because I need to get over to my mum's house, which isn't that close to me, so I need to make sure that I set off in enough time to get first to my brother's house, then together we're going to drive up to my mum's, and then finally when we arrive we get to have a Mother's Day brunch with her and my sister, which I can't wait for. Obviously the company will be great, but at this point in time I am starving hungry, so the brunch will be very, very, very welcome when we arrive. Other than that, I don't actually have any reading updates to share with you right now, because after I last spoke to you yesterday I watched the second episode of Bridgerton, picked Jay up from work, we had dinner together, and then went to bed because we knew we had to be up early to get everything done that we needed to do before setting off this morning. So yesterday evening was somewhat non-eventful and I haven't had time to do any reading this morning. On account of the busyness of today, I don't think I'll be getting loads of reading done, but I am going to bring my copy of the Paris apartment with me in the car because I think I might as well get a few chapters read while I'm sitting there anyway. So without further ado, I'll catch up with you at brunch. This week I am really really going to be trying to be a bit more disciplined with my reading. It is currently Monday evening. I've just finished work for the day, and also can we just take a brief moment to appreciate the fact that it is currently nearly 6:30 in the evening and it is still bright as day. I'm so happy about that. The clocks went forward yesterday morning and oh my god, it's already made such a difference. The fact that it is light when I'm finishing work and like properly light, not just a tiny bit of sunlight clinging on, but actual full-on daylight is very exciting. But I digress. What I was trying to say was that it's Monday evening, I finished work for the day, and my current habit at the moment is to finish work and then just make dinner, watch some TV and go to bed. And while that is a wonderful way to spend an evening, and I certainly enjoy myself, I have just fallen into this habit of thinking and telling myself that I don't have time for reading on work days, and therefore I pretty much only pick up books on the weekend. So you'll see that in my reading vlogs. I pretty much only talk to you guys on Friday, Saturday and Sunday, and I don't really give any reading updates during the week, and that's because I've convinced myself that I don't have time. And while it's true that I don't have loads of time, I've just finished work now at about 6 p.m. and I pretty much go to bed between 8:30 and 9, so no, I don't have loads of time. But could I put aside 20 minutes every evening just to read a few chapters? Yes, of course I could, and it's just that I don't at the moment. So that's what I'm going to try and do this week, is just simply get disciplined and make myself settle down after work for just a couple of chapters before then going into my evening relaxation and watching TV, eating dinner and going to bed. So with that in mind, I didn't really do any reading yesterday because Mother's Day was wonderful, but it did take up the majority of my day. So I don't have any reading updates, but I do have 2 books that I'm reading, of course, and so I'm going to go and read a couple of chapters of each of these books before settling down for some leftover pizza and a couple of episodes of Bridgerton to close my evening down. It would seem that I'm now on a little bit of a race against time, which definitely seems to be just a theme of my life when it comes to end of month reading, but the end of March seems to be sneaking up on me very, very quickly, by which I mean that it is only a couple of days until the start of April, and I, where possible, don't like to carry books over. I like to finish a book that I'm reading at the end of one month and then be able to start a fresh book with a fresh month, and I just feel like it's neater. So although technically nothing bad will happen if I don't finish my books before the start of April, just for my own sense of internal organisation, I would like to be able to finish both Alias Grace, which I'm just reading a little bit of now, and The Paris Apartment before March ends, which means reading is definitely going to have to be even more of a top priority this week than I was anticipating. But in terms of Alias Grace, which I've just been doing some reading of this evening, I am now on page 446, and that means I have just this little bit left at the end, less than 100 pages left to go, and so this one feels very much within my grasp to finish either tonight or tomorrow morning, which is very exciting. I'm really enjoying this book, and while I found the concept interesting right from the beginning, I have found that the last couple of 100 pages have really ramped up my interest, and that is because we've finally gotten into the depth of Grace recollecting her history, her story, everything that happened leading up to the murders that she was accused of, and that has been by far the most interesting part of this book. And of course it's kind of what you think you're getting into based on the blurb, so it's nice when you kind of fully get into that story. So I've definitely found that this book has ramped up my interest level as I've gotten further towards the end. Additionally, I also thought it was worth mentioning that while say for example The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood really puts the issue of the objectification of women's bodies at the forefront of the book, that is really what that text is about, this book definitely has elements of those discussions, but obviously in a slightly different context, because rather than being in a futuristic dystopian society, we instead have a like historical 1800s setting. But there are discussions of women being pregnant outside of marriage, the decisions that some of them make, abortion, obviously in an illegal sense at this time, and the sort of like lengths women would go to preserve their position as a working woman, because they didn't have any other choice but to work and provide for themselves. So when they find themselves in a situation where they've gotten pregnant outside of marriage, there are some quite drastic measures taken. Excuse me, choking on my words, but yeah, some drastic measures being taken, and Margaret Atwood, as I knew that she did because of having read The Handmaid's Tale, discusses those issues in great depth and really brings them to the forefront. And so although that's not the primary focus of this book, I think it is really interesting to see those discussions being had in the novel as well. So going to be doing some more reading of this book this evening, fingers crossed might even finish it, and then that will mean that the rest of the week can be dedicated to The Paris Apartment, which, though I really want to finish, is slightly less pressing than Alias Grace, just because I have the live show of this one in a couple of days, so that is why I'm prioritising this one. Well, I finished Alias Grace, reading update to follow in the morning, because as of right now I'm just in bed with my copy of The Paris Apartment and I'm trying to do some reading, though as we can see my little friend over there is not so keen on bedtime reading and instead wants all of my attention, so we'll see how much I read, but I'm currently on page 248. I'm going to try and get a few pages in before sleeping. About this bloody jumper and my Fitbit, but it just won't stay inside. But anyway, it is Thursday lunchtime. I finally have 5 minutes to sit down and talk to you guys. And specifically, we need to talk about Alias Grace, because as I mentioned last night, I managed to finish this one before bed, which was a miracle really in and of itself, given the fact that I'm usually such a victim of my own tiredness that reading sends me to sleep almost instantly most evenings. So the fact that I was able to stay awake until way past my very early bedtime of about 9 p.m. to finish this book is testament to the fact that it was so gripping, and definitely a book that just was unputdownable at the end, because there was so much going on. And I feel like Margaret Atwood at the end of this book, within the last 150 pages, just rushes you with so much revelation, and it is all of the anticipation that you've had building throughout the rest of the novel sort of comes to fruition, and it is just so gripping. So I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars in the end, and that comes down to the fact that while I enjoyed the book all the way through, it was definitely one that became more enjoyable the further through the book that I got, and I do think that some of the text at the beginning was a little bit less easy to follow, and also just felt a bit disposable, in the sense that it just didn't have quite as much impact on the narrative as the information that we get towards the end. And while I didn't dislike those bits, I just think the book would have been even better if it would have been slightly snappier and more to the point. But on the whole, I really loved this one. It was such a great book to kickstart the A to Z of classics read along with, and also it was so fun for me to read a Margaret Atwood book that wasn't a dystopian, because that is the only style I've ever read of hers before, and I feel like this was just very different in some ways, obviously in the setting, in the like more realistic and historical like context of the book, but then also while it was different in some ways, it also felt very familiar in others, particularly as I have mentioned in her discussions around things like females, the female body in particular, female bodily autonomy, and then also like these structures of power within, generally speaking, patriarchal situations that then impact female bodies in the ways that she discusses. And so it was really interesting to sort of have a book that felt very fresh and unique compared to her other ones that I've read, but equally very familiar in a way that I personally really liked. So yeah, loved this book, and I'm so glad that I finished it. I have done a little bit more reading of The Paris Apartment, which is coming along very, very nicely. I'm now on page 367, and this book has about 420 pages, so very, very close to the end of this one as well. I'm going to try and do a little bit more reading on my lunch break before heading back for an afternoon of work. However, I don't know if I'm going to finish this one before the end of today. I really hope I will, and if I just manage to put some time aside, I'm sure I can make it happen. But I am going out for dinner tonight with my dad, my brother and my grandma, which I'm very much looking forward to. So the aim will be to finish this book today, but if not, it will be a tomorrow job. But on the whole, I feel my reading has gone very successfully over the last few days, so we'll consider that a win no matter the outcome. We all know that my reading of late, and by of late I mean for the last like 6 to 9 months, has been something of a roller coaster. Some weeks are super productive and I just read and read and read and it doesn't feel like an effort at all, and other weeks I barely even want to look at a book, never mind read one. But this week I was feeling optimistic, so last Friday, I think probably spurred on by the beautiful spring weather we were having, I decided to take on not just one but 2 books, and alongside these books I also decided, or rather Shonda Rhimes decided, that it was the perfect week to watch the entirety of Bridgerton season 2 as well. So I didn't have an easy week this week in terms of all of the things I wanted to consume, but it felt easy because I enjoyed all of these things so much. So this morning I managed to finish off The Paris Apartment, and I also watched the last episode of Bridgerton season 2 with my breakfast, and what a journey that was. Honestly, I feel like both of these books were wonderful, and then Bridgerton was just the cherry on top of the cake of a wonderful week of entertainment, because I have just had the most wonderful time. Could I say wonderful anymore? I probably could, because it has been wonderful. And I guess that just goes to show that it really does come down to picking the right forms of entertainment, because sometimes books can be a slog. I'm not one of those people who thinks books are superior and they are like above all other forms of entertainment. A lot of the time I would probably choose TV over a book. I'm saying it right now, it's the truth, because TV just sometimes hits the spot, and books, you have to put the effort in. But when you find a book that just speaks to your soul, it totally flips around and reading becomes easy, and that is the experience I've had this week, and I really felt like I needed it, because I just feel like reading, when you feel like you're battling books, just becomes something that you resent, and it takes a couple of good books like these to just like bring you back around. And honestly, I had the most wonderful time. We of course have already talked about my concluding thoughts on Alias, Grace, but The Paris Apartment was wonderful. I have rated this one 4 stars. I think it's the only Lucy Foley that I've rated 4 stars. I think the other 2 are 5 stars. However, there is a reason for that, and that is because this book makes use of the French language in a way that feels a little bit inauthentic. I really don't like it when a book is set in a different country, but the author is obviously writing in English, but they throw like random lines of that other language into the text. But it just doesn't make sense to my brain, because if these people were really speaking French, then the entire book would be in French, or if it's translated into English, the entire book would be in English. And I might be wrong, but I don't believe that Lucy Foley is French, and therefore the adding in of random lines of French just every so often just feels very jarring to me. And I seem to remember when The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab came out, people who were actually French speaking had that same issue with that book, because it just kind of threw random bits of French in that didn't really feel like they made sense. Or yeah, I don't know, that's just the only thing for me, where it's obviously set in Paris but it's written in English, and the characters, whether French or English, speak English for the majority of the books. Then just the random bits of French just feel like she's just thrown them in there just to kind of show off, but they don't really flow because the rest of the book is not in French and the characters are not speaking French most of the time. I don't know if that makes sense, but that is just a kind of a pet peeve of mine, where I feel like she's just thrown it in there, and maybe she didn't even write it, maybe she just put this bit in French and then editor changed it. Who knows? But I didn't really vibe with that. But on the whole, this was a really great thriller. Definitely lived up to her other ones in terms of the grippingness, the twistiness, and just the sheer tension that is built throughout all of the chapters. So really, really enjoyed it and have had the most wonderful time reading. Although I do think, despite how much I have enjoyed both of these books, Bridgerton season 2 was the diamond of my season, because it was just wonderful. I actually think I preferred season 2, which I wasn't expecting to be honest. I was actually a little bit apprehensive going in, thinking that it might not be quite as good as season 1, but I absolutely loved it, and I have been listening to the Bridgerton soundtrack on repeat all week, because I just love the string quartet versions of popular songs. Big fan of the Dancing on My Own, Sign of the Times and Material Girl ones from this season. They were all just wonderful. So on that note, I started this vlog last Friday on a beautiful spring day. In between, we finished 2 books, finished an episode of Bridgerton, had some snow for crying out loud, and now I'm finishing it on another Friday, and it is beautiful again. So that just seems like the perfect way to conclude this reading vlog. So I hope you've enjoyed. If you have read either of these books or watched Bridgerton season 2, let me know your thoughts down below, and if not, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.